Do you ever feel overwhelmed by the seemingly unlimited number of choices that you have to make throughout the songwriting process, lyrically and musically? Today I'm going to help you cut through the confusion so that you can make choices with clarity and confidence. Hi, I'm Brian from Unmute Your Muse TV, where we teach 5-minute masterclasses for songwriters. We use the Gold Song Solution to help you write songs that people will love, buy, and tell their friends about. So as a songwriter, you have a nearly unlimited number of options at your fingertips. Lyrically, the English language can be put into an infinite number of combinations. You can say the same thing in 100 different ways, 1,000 different ways sometimes. And sometimes it feels like you're just overwhelmed with possibilities. And musically, as things have continued to move more and more digitally, you can even synthetically create almost any sound you could possibly imagine so that your options are almost literally limitless insofar as the sonic possibilities that you have, musically speaking. Now, if you combine those limitless possibilities with all of the multiple hats that most songwriters have to wear, of being both a business person, a songwriter, a lyricist, a musician, a theorist, a band member, a publicist, a gig booker, the van driver, all of these different hats that you have to wear, and the choices that you need to make wearing each of those different hats. So given all of that, sometimes it's very easy for us to feel totally overwhelmed by the infinite number of choices that seem before us, and it's hard to know which way to proceed. Now, depending on your personality type, there are two main responses to this kind of situation, both of which are not particularly helpful. On one end of the spectrum, we've got those of us who tend a little more towards the chaotic kind of things, like, I'm just gonna let things happen however they happen, and I definitely lean in that direction. So that would manifest itself with, like, I don't necessarily want to spend a heck of a lot of time trying to figure out what all of the theoretical possibilities are for the music theory behind the chords and scales that I'm using right now. I just want to let the creativity come to me. I just want to let the gigs come as they come. Like, I'll reach out randomly here and there, and I'll figure out my path forward that way. Just let stuff happen. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the perfectionists. Now, my wife Kelly, whom you guys know, also very clearly fits in towards that side of the spectrum, where perfectionists constantly want to make sure that they pick the best possible option out of all of the options that are out there, and they'll work over and over and over again, nitpicking and changing and making things better until they get the product to the point where it's the best that it possibly could be, as if we know that, like, that's even possible. Like, you could always spend another hour in the studio working on your mix. And some people tend toward that. Now, I don't think that either of those extremes are particularly helpful. So over the last couple years, I've been developing a philosophy that I call informed intentional decisions to help all of us, no matter where on that spectrum we might fit naturally, to be able to make the most productive use of our choices and to move forward in a way that's actually going to help our songs be better. One thing to note is I don't believe that there really is such a thing as a wrong decision. You can make it for the wrong reason, or you can make a decision with false expectations or unrealistic expectations. That's one thing. But you can make a decision to go in almost any direction that you want. But the idea with informed intentional decisions is that we know what the main options are. And farther than that, we know what the likely consequences of each of those options are. And then we can pick which option best aligns with what our goals are so we can meet our needs. So let's break that down a little bit. First, let's talk about what it is to make an informed decision. Now, an informed decision is one where you know the possibilities, you know what the main different directions that you could possibly head in given a situation. So let's just say that you're trying to come up with a chord progression. So if you want to know what the main possibilities for different chords that are coming up are, you could be like, okay, well, I know my functions, therefore I know the chords that are going to sound sonically resonant with the ones that I've already used. Or you're like, oh, maybe I could pick some of these chords that go a little bit farther outside, or I'll take some chords that are borrowed from another key or from the parallel minor or something like that. And if you know those options, then you can move forward and make an intelligent choice, an intentional choice about which one of those best meets the goals that you have for that chord progression. Do you need a little more tension? Then maybe you want to try one of those chords that's a little bit outside of the key that you're actually in. Or if this is a point where like the lyrics are coming into, where it's coming to fruition and everything's coming together and you're starting to feel a little bit settled, maybe you want to pick a chord that doesn't have an awful lot of tension built into it. But if you know what your options are, then you can make a better choice. So being informed takes a couple different things. It might actually take you gaining some of the skills that are required to be a better song crafter. So that's not just having creative ideas come to you through the muse, through whatever inspirational activities you might be involved with, but it's the matter of the skills of being able to put a song together, the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts of building a song from the bottom up. Having some actual songcraft knowledge. And that might take some training, that might take some mentoring, might be requiring you watching some more videos like this, or reading a book, taking a class, if you need those skills in order to know what your options are. Another thing that is really helpful when you're trying to figure out your options is talking to other people, is playing your partially written songs for other people and trying to get feedback. They may be able to say, oh, hey, well, did you ever consider taking your song in this direction? So I found that interacting with other real human beings is a really good way to expose yourself to more opportunities, more options, so that you have a wider array of things to choose between. And the idea here is once you know what your options are, is you want to be able to think a couple steps ahead and know what the likely consequences of each of those choices might be. And like I made with the chord progression example, know the different amounts of tension that are going to be conveyed by your different chord choices, and then be able to decide which one of those works. Now, once you're able to make an informed decision about all the different options that are available and what the natural consequences for each of those options are, the next phase is to be able to make an intentional decision as to which one of those options you follow. And in order to make an intentional decision, you need to be really clear as to what your goals and your values are. Now that can happen on a macro level where you're asking yourself, like, why am I even into songwriting in the first place? And that can help you decide what kinds of songs to write, for whom are you going to be writing those songs, what venues are you going to be writing these songs, what context are you writing them within. Or it can be on a very, very micro level where, like I said, with that chord progression, you need to know, okay, for this particular line of the song, I need to be conveying this emotion to support this lyric that I have. And if you're not clear on what the goal of that line is, you're not going to be able to make the appropriate chordal choice moving forward. And this can apply to absolutely every phase of the songwriting process, whether you're picking instrumentations, or you're picking a melody line, or you're trying to decide which singer to hire to record your song, or you're trying to decide, what style that you're actually shooting for. Any of the thousands and thousands of musical or business decisions that you as a songwriter have to make, you can apply this same technique to, where you need to be informed as to the possibilities, know the consequences of each of those possibilities, know your goals, and then once you have those pieces of information, then you can make that decision where the likely outcome best lines up with what your goals are. Not saying that things are always going to work out the way you have planned. Life loves throwing us curveballs. But if you go through, if you approach your decision-making process keeping these things in mind, you are going to be much more likely to be able to make choices that line up with what you really want and take you and your songs to where you really want them to be. So I hope all of that was helpful, and I hope that you can each use some of these techniques to make your decision-making process a little bit less stressful and a little bit more productive. Now, ironically, the very next video that we're going to be having next week is going to be talking about functions and why those are such a useful thing for songwriters to know. So tune back in next time, where we're going to be talking about the basics of functions and what that means from music theory. See you around.